music friends. John Patty here, the host of the Music in Our World podcast. Got something a little bit different for you here today. Instead of the normal interview style, I'm going to be presenting some of my research on the link between Drum Corps International in particular, and marching band. So it'll be a little bit different. It'll be a little bit shorter this time, just under 10 minutes, I believe. And just for anyone interested, you can follow up with me on my website or shoot me an email. This is definitely going to be some ongoing research. So without further ado, here it is. For many in middle school and high school band programs in the United States, marching band is a tremendous part of their study. Students participate for 4 and sometimes even 6 years during their study. Students who take part in marching band can develop mental and physical fitness, achieve great heights musically, and learn how to effectively push and challenge themselves when faced with a difficult task. Though marching band has inherent characteristics that lend themselves to facilitating this kind of growth, another similar activity, drum and bugle corps, has contributed quite a bit to how we teach and learn in a marching band setting. Drum Corps, for short, is a summer activity where performers learn a 10 to 12 minute choreographed marching show, similar to how high school marching bands do. Given that the activity takes place in the summer and the performers get to spend days and weeks together working on the same show, the level of achievement can be much higher in Drum Corps than in marching band. Members of a drum corps can work 12 hours a day on the same 30 seconds of a production during the summer, whereas in some areas, like my home state of Texas, are governed by rules that limit after-school rehearsal, in our case, to 8 hours a week. As younger students began participating more, then bringing back their drum corps experience to their school band programs, the methodology and disciplines those students learned in the summer began to change the way school band programs functioned. The drum corps activity grew, and more active band directors began to get involved with drum corps during the summer. From a performer standpoint and from an educator standpoint, the achievement expectations went up, and the ways concepts are taught evolved with each summer tour and fall marching season. With the founding of Drum Corps International in 1972, high school marching bands saw the addition of these intense and virtuosic arrangements, impressive and challenging field movements, and meaningful theatrical elements during the summers of the 70s and the 80s. Marching Music's professional league, as Drum Corps International likes to call itself, has inspired students and directors alike since the Veterans of Foreign Wars and other similar organizations came together to create a national approach to the facilitation and competition and education. The measured effect of the advent of Drum Corps International on the scholastic band ensembles has heretofore not been documented. Several theses and dissertations briefly mention drum corps, or a corps-style marching band approach, but provide no context as to what that actually means or how it differs from any other style of marching band. The musical achievement and success of scholastic music and the number of competing groups has risen steadily since the advent of the Summer Drum Corps Tour hosted by Drum Corps International. This podcast will provide insight into what I allege is one of the biggest inspirational events to modern music education that has come in quite some time. I contend that the example set by Drum Corps International and its competing ensembles has made the scholastic band directors and students more motivated, capable, and enthusiastic about their activity and band music in general. Winning directors from Bands of America have shared their insights and experiences with how Drum Corps has impacted their lives and the lives of their students through music education. These directors can attest personally how the motivation to design, educate, and compete is bolstered by the stretching of boundaries and the high-level execution in the drum corps world. For this particular podcast, I surveyed some of the finalist band directors from this year's Grand National Competition in the Bands of America circuit. In my survey, I asked these directors to briefly describe their experience with DCI or other drum corps organizations. I then asked how their experience in general with Drum Corps International impacted them as a performer, as an educator, and as a fan of the activities Drum Corps and marching band in general. I then asked them to give insights on how Drum Corps International has impacted scholastic marching band at large. Several of the directors who responded agreed that as a performer, participating in Drum Corps taught them about dedication, time management, teamwork, and appreciation for the activity, and specifically that the music that they were performing. Even those for whom drum corps is not their favorite genre participation can raise awareness of achievement in the marching arts. As active educators, drum corps participants translate the tenacity with which they were taught to high standards for their students and fellow staff members. In the 1980s, drum corps shows began being broadcast and recorded, which allowed many more people to enjoy, observe, and study the way the shows work, and from more angles than even a live show would be able to demonstrate. To quote Mr. Greg Brim, director of bands for Marian Catholic High School in Chicago Heights, Illinois, "Those years were a time of amazing artistic growth in DCI and for marching band. Drum corps were pursuing far more artistic options than earlier. This led me, and marching bands in general, to feel freer to explore more artistic depth. This became a symbiotic relationship where bands and DCI fed each other. In the band world at the time, the late 80s and 90s, choices were being made not to sound like drum corps. Much emphasis was placed on using woodwinds as a consistent part of the preferred band sound, or concert band on the field. This allowed for Drum Corps International and bands to work in parallel without negative consequence, such as earlier when bands were trying to sound specifically like drum corps." End quote. As fans, many classical and jazz pieces became commonplace, and therefore the average drum corps listener was exposed to interesting and entertaining arrangements of music they may have never heard before. Not only does the competitive spirit of DCI produce new ways to look at older material, the consistent progressive nature of the show developments allows listeners to develop a more critical eye and ear for music and for composers in general. All respondents agree that DCI has impacted scholastic band in multiple ways. While new concepts are fresh from the summer, students and teachers alike can return to their band programs and share what they practiced and learned all summer. As mentioned before, the crossover, particularly for educators, of participation for educators and designers, is exposing even more students to more musically mature concepts by sharing design ideas and musical selections. Dual duty folks can also share drill and concept designs, teaching techniques, and rehearsal etiquette. Props, costumes, and things commonplace in drum corps that are borrowed in the band world are becoming more and more expensive, but though there are some growing pains, in the words of Avon High School Director of Bands Jay Webb, Drum Corps International serves as a paradigm for the possible. End quote. My thesis that Drum Corps International has contributed positively to the way that marching band has evolved, as well as how we teach certain band concepts, was largely corroborated. It is important to understand that with any educational activity, the maturity and capability of the instructor plays quite a role in the effectiveness of teaching methods. A drum corps student and a marching band student are likely to be participating for different reasons, and it's important for the educator to know that. Drum corps has given educators a wealth of techniques and tools to use, and it has definitely evolved since its inception to provide a more pedagogical approach than the blunt force, "run it again" mindset before Drum Corps International was founded. Many fine band directors who were not present at this year's Grand National competition have also adapted techniques from their drum corps experience into the way that they teach their scholastic bands. This initial installment about the history linking the two activities should be considered an ongoing work. More travels, time, live shows, and director interaction will certainly yield an even clearer picture of just how important drum corps was and is to the development of marching band.